Hi there. Welcome to another episode of the Natanya Experience. My guest today is the one, the only Archie Clay. Archie comes to us and talks about a really interesting career journey that many of entrepreneurs, listeners, and many of you listening could probably relate to. He talks about what it was like to start his dream business and what it was like to kind of see that dream business get a couple bumps and a couple knocks and maybe a partnership that didn't quite work out, and how, although it might have seemed like it was the end, it actually was only the beginning. And how, after that first wave and stumble, he was able to build back up and create this amazing clothing brand that he has today. So stay tuned and welcome Archie Clay. Hi there, and welcome to the Natanya Experience. Today, I have a special guest with me, Archie Clay III, founder of Brain Love. Welcome to the show, Archie.
What's up? What's up? How you doing? Pleasure to have. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, as we do, we're going to start talking about all the good stuff, what you're working on, what you're excited about, and how it's been going. Then we'll kind of backpedal a little bit and talk about how you got here today, some of the happy things and some of the not so happy things, to just help put a little realistic conversation together about what it's like to live your best life and kind of transform yourself into the you that you are today.
No, for sure. Excited.
All right. So let's get into it. Tell us about Brain Love.
Well, man, again, my name is Archie Clay III, founder, CEO of Brain Love. Brain Love is a luxury apparel and accessories company focused on changing the narrative around mental health and wellness within our communities and the world. Um, the thought process was always to merge high-end fashion, right, with feeling, right, being able to feel and have that embodiment of that product, but also align to the impact that we want to have in the world. We believe that brands have so much power and influence in the world, and we want to be a brand that has influence, but more importantly, making impact and like pouring back into the community as well.
Amazing. And as we speak to different kinds of people from the show in our personal lives, we talk a lot with visual artists and hip hop and other entertainment artists that talk about how they express themselves through their art. And I love the fact that you've taken sort of, I think, a little bit of a different bent, if you will, by looking at fashion as art expression and as a connection to something bigger and something cerebral. And that's pretty cool,
I
actually is.
appreciate it. I
And
appreciate
I also shout out to our mutual friend Jen Libby, who connected us.
for
Whoop,
sure.
whoop. Because it just seemed like a slam dunk in what you're trying to do and getting sort of let's just say the fashion as a door opener. And then obviously people who know me know that I also love fashion a
What's up?
lot, and also because I've been all different sizes. So in fairness, there's a time when you want to feel good whatever size shape you are and whatever you way you like to express yourself through
Right.
fashion. It's sort of a way to dress for this life, right? So I love the fact that you're kind of combining things that maybe other people wouldn't think go together, but then they feel like a really natural expression. And I know in post, we're going to try and show some examples of the clothing for the viewers as well. But I would love for you to talk me through a little bit around how do you create a piece of fashion that represents what, all of these things together.
Well, I think first and foremost, it kind of goes back into the perspective in the mind, right? I think for me, when I first created the company, we created a company last year. So this is our 1 year anniversary. September 28th is actually our actual official date of
Oh,
anniversary.
nice.
So,
Almost
super,
happy
yeah,
anniversary.
super excited to, be in this position and, moving pretty quickly as far as how we're scaling and how we're getting the brand out to the world. But I think honestly, it starts with my personal feeling of what I wanted people to feel. Um, Not just with the brand, but with the first collection. So the first collection was called Love You. It was all centered around loving who you are, loving yourself first. Because kind of take a step back, I'm sure we're going to go into this, but had some things happen where I kind of had to connect back to myself and my spiritual side. And I think that in order to find that balance within oneself, you have to come back to yourself, right? And be connected to something higher so that you can still find that confidence in yourself to be more, right? So how we design, man, is all about feeling, right? We want the consumer or the customer to feel that energy when they touch the product or when they read the back of the shirt or when they're connected to it, right? And it's it's what fashion is, regardless of how much impact you want to make, people want to see cool things. They want to see something that's high quality, right? Before they even understand the story, right? So for us, it was making sure that that first glimpse of the product, it connects you to it, right? From the details of the pricing tag to the inside of the garment to the back of the garment to the textures of the garment. You know what I mean? So we are really connected to the experience of how you feel when you touch it and see it for the first time.
Yeah, so that's a lot of layers. So there's like the visual stimulus, the visceral feeling of it, the messaging, the aesthetic, the actual fit of the clothing on the
Right.
body, like all those layers. You're taking all of that into consideration and then having conversations. Can you tell me in terms of that first collection and loving yourself, um, what can you get a little granular about how that idea, sorry, comes through into an actual design element? Like, just as,
Right.
pick one example maybe that you feel strongly about.
Right. So when I first, so I have a designer. We both kind of have like brainstorming sessions. So we sit down, we have a conversation. I kind of have an ideal in my head of what I want the consumer to feel, but also how I'm feeling too. Right. Um, it's important to understand that in order for us to create the foundation or bridge off of the foundation is to have one love within self, right? So when we first started creating that collection, it was like, man, how do I want people to feel? Right? I want people to feel confident in themselves. I want people to feel that we care about them. Right. This shirt represents this. So when you look at the back of the shirt, you guys see the pictures, you'll see that it starts off saying that this shirt represents XYZ. Right. And we want people to feel that energy, right? Before you even understand our social impact and all this love that we have on mental health and everything, like we want you to feel that when you see the shirt or the hoodie or the hat for the first time. Even this hat, right? I got my head. It's called the brilliance hat, right? So it represents you being brilliant in yourself. That we are all brilliant in our own ways, right? There's all different ways to be the best version of yourself, right? Brilliant is not just being super smart. It's about how you grow and how you evolve and how you push yourself forward, right? So for us, it's like it's taking these terminologies that we've been taught, but some terminology has been taught to represent a certain individual or a certain thought process, right? I think we could go beyond these things at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
And be focused and be pushed further. You know what I mean? So for us, when it comes to design and creating that collection, it's like how do we push it forward from a thought process perspective?
I love that. And so, like the word brilliance, for example, right? So, bright is really brightness, right? And brightness doesn't necessarily mean you're a whiz at calculus.
Right.
Uh, it can be something of how you just shine your light onto other people and for yourself, right? I'm
Right.
just paraphrasing, but yeah,
Oh,
that's
that
really
was
great.
perfect. Perfect. And to add to that, it's like there isn't just one thing that represents one thing. You know what I mean? Like two things can be true, right? You know what I mean? That you can be super smart and you might not be the best person. You know what I mean? So that's just life in general. So like once we understand that we can do more, like we can push more, right? We can impact more. We can do things outside the box. Like that's the representation of what Brainlet represents is that we're taking something from like a luxury thought process because you hear people from the luxury fashion industry say that hey, you can't be luxury with a price point of $200. Like why can you not? Who created that? Like there's always disruption, there's always perspective, right? Because at the end of the day, if I can create the best quality material that's in competition with a Louis Vuitton, I'm just pricing mine lower than yours. That doesn't mean that my quality is not better than yours. You
Yeah,
know,
that's a really great point. Before we go into, because I would like to go back now into the seedy underbelly of it
right,
all. Before we
right,
do that, I do think it's important, and not to get too distracted, but it is climate week,
right.
and we are talking about sustainability in a lot of different venues here. It's in the mainstream news, and fast fashion gets trashed a lot, but also luxury fashion. So,
For sure.
the delta, and I'm oversimplifying big issues here, so forgive me, everyone, but just to say that's a really important point because you're calling it luxury because of the luxurious fabrics and the attention to detail and the craftsmanship. And in that way, not necessarily because you're trying to have a price point delta of thousands and thousands of dollars per garment or
Right, right,
item just because you can. And
right,
so this way, more people, yes, it's still premium priced for many, many, many people, but
right,
for many, many more people who might not ever be able to buy Louis Vuitton or Chanel or Gucci or what have you can buy Brain Love and
right,
have that same or similar level of commitment to the actual quality of the garment's manufacturing process and design and personalization, and that's pretty unique. So I just wanted to kind of break that down to say we're
oh,
not aware that even $200 for some people is unattainable,
right,
but it's much more. There are many more people who could consume these products and
right,
appreciate that level of care in their clothing,
exactly,
outside of the 2,000, $20,000 range, and that, like, I think nobody gets a monarchy on the word luxury just because they have a brand label that's in that way. So that's really, really cool, and very, it shows also your commitment to a balance between quality, authenticity,
right.
creativity, and accessibility. So
Right.
that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think to add to that is that, like I said, this is our first year, right? And we have so much evolution in the brand that we want to push. Like the way Louis Vuitton creates these experiences for their clientele, we want to do the same thing. Like we want to give you that level of experience. Like to your point, but we want to make that experience accessible, right? We want to have that customization. Like we have a whole perspective of how we view our first store. You know what I mean? Like we want you to walk in and feel like, wow, like this is just amazing. Like I just feel like I'm just having a great time. I want you to feel those vibes and that energy when you walk into our store or you go to our website or you touch our product. Like we are evolving. Like we have a full social impact evolutionary roadmap that we're working through as we grow and as we evolve, and how we can make these experiences more attainable to some people that may not ever experience, what Louis Vuitton has to offer, and, or help them evolve so maybe they can experience. Like I think we can experience whatever we want to experience in life by pushing ourselves to be great in every single angle that we would like to see ourselves be great in.
That is incredible, and I think it's a great place to segue into the journey to get to this exciting burgeoning time, right? So, I don't know where we wanna start. I do know a few things, and there's a lot of things I don't know that we talked about before in terms of, let's say for optics, in terms of the business partnerships and that journey that you've had there, and there's been some deviation, and or we could go even further back in time, and maybe actually that's where I'd like to start if that's
Yeah,
okay. Let's go back to
yeah,
baby Archie time. And we're gonna
yeah,
talk about what it was like because you didn't have necessarily, some of the more typical schooling experiences, upbringing experiences, and talk about how that early Archie time, developed your views on the world and what you wanna be and how you show up.
man. Young Archie, very energetic, very, 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 very energetic, but very loving, very caring. It was just me and my mom. Like my mother is my rock, always be my rock. Of course, my wife now is my rock. But my mother was that foundation for me. We've been through so much together. And I just, man, it brings joy to even speak about her in that way, because she is the reason why I am who I am right now. I was homeschooled all the way up to 8th grade, which I think we became more closer during that time period. Even though during that time period, I used to cry in my books and used to be like, "Yo, get it together!" Like, you know what I mean? Like, but my mom is a true educator. She taught me the understanding of emotions and how to be one with your emotions and be aligned with that. She taught me to be aware of my emotions, to be aware of my own trauma, dealing with my father. You know what I mean? Not really having a strong relationship with my father. My mother never talked bad about my father. Um, so that, but that also, as we kind of, got older, that also confused me as well. For someone to not talk bad about someone, but also not be connected, what was that shift? You know what I mean? But her guiding me through this journey and pushing me and always making me confident. Like my mom showed up to every martial arts performance, every basketball game, every single thing. She was the number one fan. So from a confidence standpoint, I had that. Like I had that to a T. Like I would never not confident in myself, my abilities to achieve and push more. I might have been, lazy at times and things of that nature, but that's been a teenager. It's been a child in general. Like you have those moments where you kind of ebb and flow through life. But But when I look back on my childhood, no, we wasn't rich. We wasn't middle class. We just made it. We made it day to day. But my mom was the anchor, like she was the rock, and she never made it seem like we didn't have that much. She made sure that we had everything that we need to, to make it happen. You know what I mean? If I need a pair of J's, I may not get them when I asked for them. I may not get them on my birthday. You know what I mean? So there was always happiness and joy. And me having two little siblings as well. Mom remarried. We moved to Mississippi for a little bit and moved back to Atlanta. So much joy. And I ended up graduating from Stone Mountain High School at the top of my class. Ended up graduating from Tuskegee University, where that was a space of just love and just family. And that was the embodiment of what I grew up having, like with my family, like my intermediate family. You know what I mean? So looking back on that, like I look back and say, hey, I was born for this time. Like I learned all these different ways of understanding my feelings and understanding emotions and understanding trials and tribulations and understanding that we didn't have much, but also be a hustler and a grinding and being grateful for the things that we do have and I do have right now. You know what I mean? So always grateful to God to, ebb and flow through these trials and tribulations, through these journeys throughout my entire life. And I'm super grateful. You know what I mean? I think that those things my mom prepared me for this moment. And it was crazy to put this past weekend, we had one of our panel conversations called "The Power of Women," and it was such a blessing and honor to have my mom on that panel, right? And to hear people say like, "She's just amazing," and you've done so much great things. And my mom is getting her; she just graduated with her master's. You know what I mean? And she's doing so many amazing things. She's traveling. She's doing everything that she wanted to do when she couldn't because she was with us. My mom was a full-time mother; like she didn't work until like the last 9 years. My mom is 55 now. You know what I mean? So for her to sacrifice so much, it just puts a lot of things in perspective for me, uh, as I'm going out through my dreams and going down this journey. And, you know, it led me here. Like God is saying, hey, like you have a voice, you have a talent as well when it comes to fashion and how you show up there. I think this is a space for you to really highlight and promote and inspire people to see themselves as such a bigger light. You know what I mean? And I'm grateful and I take it very seriously that I have this space and I've been given the platform to do so.
There's a lot there. Thank you. No, I mean, I'm pretty close to your mom's age, so I had like my heart was swelling with pride to hear a child be so grateful and honoring because it's tough. And I like that you made fun of. We also in COVID some homeschooling, and there was little crumpled notes on the ground about what they really felt about certain classes that we were teaching. We were like, oh, this is what they really think. I hate
Right,
this or whatever. I'm like, um, so that's a labor of love in a lot of layers, to be sort of the leader of the social, emotional, the creative, the academic, all of that, homeschooling and managing the family, but also, and again, not to lean into stereotypes, but we can unpack them a little bit. And I know, we talked about this offline in terms of things like boxes that people want to put us in, whether they be by gender or ethnicity or class or, race or religion. And
right,
that, you know, this is not exactly the most typical story, right? Because not everyone, regardless of class or ethnicity, has a parent that's involved with their life. Not
right,
everyone has a parent that can help teach them about their emotions, especially young males, right? Like that's a whole thing that was almost like, oh, boys will be boys. Like it's a newer thing to kind of lean into. We're all human beings and we need to kind of understand how to regulate ourselves to show up and be the best way to deal with adversity, to unlock our super potential, all of
right,
that. But also, you talked about not having the father there. And it's obviously noticeable in life and storybooks and movies and everywhere you see about dads, and yours isn't there. But mom isn't disparaging him, which says a lot about her character and her nature. But it's also understandable. There's still a hole. And
right.
what does it mean?
For
And how
sure.
are you supposed to feel about yourself and the way you operate in the world as a man and potentially a father and that kind of stuff? So there's a lot of layers there. I just want to say thank you for sharing all that. We can't unpack it all, but
Right,
I think I think it's really interesting because in some ways people will be like, "Oh, I had that too," and other people will be like, "Oh, I did not have that." And it just shows you that, you're taking the best of all the bits and amplifying.
right,
But in spite of all that, there have been times where you weren't feeling maybe as confident or as hopeful in your process of getting this company off the ground. So I was wondering, if it's not too difficult, if we could talk a little bit about some of that, because I think, unfortunately, for better or for worse, with the way the news cycle goes, people remember sometimes the tragedy as much as the triumph. And it's important to show that you don't really get one without the other.
No, man, I know that very well. Like my first company is called Wear Brands, and we did such amazing things, such amazing things, and I'm always grateful for that time and the 7 years of growing a company and building it from scratch. My first company, that company was built on the principle of my grandmother, and I think that's why I had so much connection to it, and that's why I think it hurt so much. And I don't think people realize how much it really hurt me. Like it, I know we talk about, splitting and a business partner. That's fine. Like that's what is going to happen. We had different views. We have different understandings of how to run business, and that's fine. But I think what really hurt me is the fact that I gave everything to something that was for someone, and that hurt me. And I kind of fast forward. I was very upset with God. Point blank. Period. Like I didn't understand. I was very confused, very confused on why this is happening. Right?
Let
Why?
let me interrupt you. I'm sorry, just one
Right.
second, sweetie. I want to explain what we're talking about just a
Okay.
little bit, in
So yeah,
terms of what was the thing, because I think that part we might not have made clear. Sorry
no, for
about that.
sure. So Wearbrand was a luxury fedora hat company that we started in 2016. We were in Nordstrom's, Neiman Marcus. We did over 7 figures in sales over 7 years. I had a business partner. We did a lot of amazing things. For the first 3 years, we grinded out, we hustled, we understood the business, understand how to create a hat, understand how to scale a business. Myself, I went full time in year 3 or 4, year 3. And I quit my job and I said, "Hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this." So around 2000, I think 18 to I was full time. Like I really put everything into it. And we scaled up every year. Every year we was doubling our numbers every year. So 2023 was our biggest year. We did around $400,000, but that was the year with everything went to went to craziness, and from there, I just understood that, and I look back at, man, and I fought myself as well because I wasn't as vocal as I should have been in the beginning. Right. And by being, I'm learning business as well. I'm learning how to have these uh, conflict conversations and uncomfortable conversations around equity and what's going to happen. Like, are we going to go full time? Like, what happens when we do 6 figures? Like, all these conversations that you should have in the beginning, I didn't have those conversations because I was uh, aligning to thinking that that person understood where we were going. Right. And it's assuming that that person understood where we were going. And that's where I messed up myself. And I'll take ownership in that because I expected that when we hit these numbers, that this is what we was gonna do. This was the trajectory, right? Because I'm seeing other companies and breed up on other companies, and once they hit that pill, they start paying themselves. That's when you leap. And I leap before that. I want to get paid. I lost my car. Like I lost a lot of things, man. That just I was willing to sacrifice. I was willing to sacrifice everything because I saw it. Like, but it was there. It was not like I was seeing an invisible brand. Right? We were doing amazing things. Like we hit our first 6 figures. Like in 2018, 2019. You know what I mean? So like I saw it then, right? Um, so from there, like we a lot of things happened in 2023, and it had me very confused with God and not understanding like what was next for me. Like, am I supposed to fight for this or am I supposed to give it up? Now I'm not fighting for it, and the person I'm fighting with is not understanding. So now it's just being messy. You know what I mean? And that's just not about a messy person, And I had to take a step back and cry and connect with my wife and my mother and my family to understand what I'm going to do. And mind me, at this time period, I'm preparing. I'm preparing to propose at this time early in the year. So I'm like, yo, like what? I'm about to have no company. So what I'm going to do? You know what I'm saying?
Well,
So
yeah. I mean, I would love to know about. So you had a pretty strong foundation, a lot of skills in emotional regulation. That said, we're talking about the business, but we're also talking about a really deep relationship with a business partner that's having tension and conflict and animosity and all of that and regret and what have you. Financially, it went from feeling comfortable to feeling scarcity at a time when, if you're going to propose, even though, I mean, obviously she said yes and you're married, so that's a good end of story. But meaning, you want to seem like you're on solid footing, especially
Right,
if we're talking about heteronormative, like, relationships,
right.
maybe a little old fashioned in that way, but there are those tropes around, well, you're going to ask her to marry you. Do you have a job? Do you have an income? Are you going to
Yes.
be able to help provide, if not provide? Obviously, a lot more partnership focused financial relationships these days,
Right.
but again, not with judgment, just putting out some
No,
cliches there to say, did it make you feel, or did you wrestle with any kinds of feelings about your own sort of self-worth and value and potential, because basically the world kind of was crashing down at a time, and even though you had a lot of tools to help you be resilient, I can only imagine there was maybe some cracks in the armor at that time.
no, for sure. There was a little bit there definitely was some insecurities for sure, right? Because you work so hard to create something where you get it to the peak or about it's on the peak, so it's like it's about to be on the cycle. It's about to move. It's already moving. So now it's about to be moving by itself. You know what I mean? So for me it was insecure. I was asking God for so much strength and wisdom and whatever he could give me because I was confused. But what I will say this, even during that time period of confusion of the business, even from a financial opportunity, like he gave me something to keep me focused, right? So I have the opportunity to be a brand ambassador for Patron during that time period, um, which was pretty cool. It allowed me to focus on getting back, like making money, right? But also getting back to my creative juices as well. You know what I mean? And what I realized is that when I asked for stuff, stuff came at the right time. It may not have been what I wanted, but it was something that helped my resume, helped me connect with people, the right people within the right industry. You know what I mean? But it's a little insecure for sure because for me, it's like I was still raised in the traditional thought process, right? The man is the one that's providing and things of that nature, right? And that was the whole purpose of Brain Love. I mean, not Brain Love now, but where Brims is like, okay, we here, like let's run it up. We about to be making millions of dollars, so there's nothing we can do now. You know what I mean? And then I remember having that. I'm gonna go back a little bit. I remember having a conversation about business partner. It went horrible, horrible, it went horrible. And I remember going back home and just breaking down to my wife, well, my fiance at that was it fiance at that time, and well, girlfriend at the time. Sorry, girlfriend. Uh, and I'm just so confused. I'm just like, why is this happening? You know what I mean? Like, why is this happening? And she was just there to support and be there, and which I always super grateful. You know what I mean? Because it's hard to. I'm sure it's hard for someone that works in corporate to date an entrepreneur because it's so up and down. You know what I mean? And
Right, and it's so unscripted, like you said. I think that's something I wanted to pull out, and again, when these things are taken out of context, they sound kind of like Hallmark cliché saccharine stuff. So, I beg forgiveness of you and anyone listening around, our ability to articulate these really complex ideas.
right,
But something you said I wanted to just pull out, which was, it wasn't exactly how I wanted it, but it was what I needed, and
right,
that kind of thing around one of the biggest things, and I struggle with it now, and then I say it, so not to be a hypocrite, but meaning I struggle with it, but I know it is what I want to believe, and I say it to my children, friends, colleagues, and that kind of thing when people are like, "How do you stay hopeful when
right,
the future is uncharted? How do you believe that things will work out and the bills will get paid when there's no guarantee right now that that's going to happen?"
right,
And whether you believe in Buddha, Allah, your agnostic, Jesus, whatever you want to call your God, the universe, respectfully saying something bigger than you putting one foot in front of the other is a part of it, but that it's more about just holding on to the potential possibility
right,
of the next thing, or that things will be as they come, and that what it looks like and how it feels might not be what you thought.
right,
But if you're open to the positive, that positive can come in. And
Right.
that's the biggest, corniest first step that is so hard to get that switch to flip sometimes for people, right? Because also you're like, well, I don't want to do the wrong thing. I don't want to be lazy. I want to make the right moves. Which moves do I make? And it's this weird, like, how much do you plan and how much do you just lean in to let things kind of come to you, and then you take, then you take action. So I just think
Yeah.
that's interesting that you said that. You're like, and then I was an ambassador for Patron. That wasn't really what I was, it's
Yeah.
made it
For real.
Patron, but it also made you feel
Right.
like, well, they don't ask you to be an ambassador. I mean, Patron is a globally recognized brand
Right.
unless they respect you. So
Right.
that probably helped you feel good. Like, I have something to say. I show up. People care what I say and do.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, all those things that help your psyche when you're feeling kind of low or down or less than, or I messed up with my business partner and they messed up with me and we're not earning and now we got to do a wedding and how am I going to do that?
Right.
So I think that's really important, that the way it happened wasn't even exactly that you sort of said, I'm going to go get this brand ambassadorship.
Right.
I
It came.
mean, although I'm assuming they reached out and you showed
Yeah.
up for
Yeah. Yeah.
your best foot forward.
That's where the spiritual side comes into play. You know what I mean? I think for me, it had to take a step back to really become closer to God and the journey that He had for me, and be okay with that journey. And I think that now looking back is that all this was supposed to happen to bring me to where I am right now, and I look back to all the greats and all the millionaires that we see now, their first company wasn't the company that had them be where they are right now. That's not how it normally works. You have some people that have, some people that not, right? So everybody's journey is different, and being able to listen and see something bigger and be able to create something more impactful. I'm grateful, and I'm grateful and super excited to see what we've been able to done in the short amount of time.
Sorry, that's awesome. And so as we kind of like wind down, I will say, even though this is a recording, I'll just say I'm excited to continue our conversations off camera
For sure.
around how we might bridge our worlds together. And so I'm just putting it out there that, of course, fashion, right? But also we do a lot of intersecting circles, so that hopefully there'll be more that you can see and purchase and experience from Archie and Brain Love, as well as perhaps some collaborative things that we might do together in the coming weeks and months,
Definitely.
as we travel circles, because we're trying to also, I mean, the last thing I want to do is have you talk a little bit, if you will, about outside of the actual clothing. And when you talk about experience, community, platform, and activism, I know not everything is in stone yet, but I'd love for you to share a little bit about that, because I think it also shows how you're committed to not necessarily be just, not that it's just, but I was going to say just being a mogul, but not just being successful in the transactional nature of this clothing company, but what you're trying to do in the mental health arena, for your community and the extended communities, the intersectional communities that overlap with you.
No, I think I'm glad you asked that question, man. We've been thinking about that very, very heavily the last couple of months because we can donate, we can have these conversations, and that's fine. Like, and I think even having the conversations, having thoughtful, raw conversations, right? People allowing people that are on the panel to be free with their thoughts, to be raw with their thoughts, because people don't want like people are tired of people just give you cookie cutter information based on what they want, what you want them to hear you say. No, I want to hear the rawness, right? I want to hear your trials and tribulation. I want to hear that you're not perfect, right? And I think that that gives people hope, right? If I'm going through something and I see that you're same and you've been through similar situations, that allows me to have hope in myself, right? And I think it goes beyond the conversations. It goes to policy. Like we've been doing a lot of research around like what the European companies have been doing, the countries have been doing around like how they're focused on mental health and well within their countries and how they treat their employees and how they have time to themselves and all these different things, right? America, we don't do that. Right. And we wonder why we have all these issues with mental health because it's not embedded into the infrastructure of the country, right? So until it's embedded into the infrastructure of the country, we're just gonna be going in circles. Like we can have people like me and nonprofits, people like you that are very vocal of it and pushing it. But if our government our local government and the federal government are not on the same page, and we can get these policies in play to kind of help people that are hurt. Like there are a lot of people that are hurt out here, and I'm not even talking about on like the high medical issues. I'm talking about just life in general. This is everyday life, and people don't have confidence in themselves because of social media and what they're hearing on social media, right? And there's not clear information on around like what does it mean to be truly confident in yourself, right? What does it mean to have people in your life that love you, right? People don't even have that. So why do you why do people think that we mental health is a serious issue? Because it doesn't start. It starts when someone's born, and they're born into something that they have no control over. You know what I mean? Because the parents may not be understanding of what this looks like, or not giving them the right information and the data, right? And I think for us, it's like we're going to be having more conversations with students, and I'm teaching entrepreneurship for our the high school students. So it's like being in those rooms to guide these young people to get them to understand. And honestly, the Gen Z are more aware of mental health than we are, and our parents are, right? But I also think getting support they need as well, right? So for us at Brain Love, we just want to be a cool voice, so people they see, because you got to be. It's all about optics as well, right? I think at the end of the day, you still have to look the way for people to respect what's coming out your mouth.
Well, why do you think I interview cool people like you?
You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? So
Right, because I said the whole reason for me doing these shows, right, was that I come in this box and I have some thoughts. I'm not an expert. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not currently a
right,
licensed therapist. I want to just get people to share honest, authentic stories of struggle,
right,
of triumph. And I want it to be different kinds of people, different life stages, meaning ages, young, middle, old, whatever, however you define old. Some people old is over 17, depends who you ask, right? I want everyone who doesn't look the same or love the same or worship the same, so that everyone can find a story that they're like, ooh, that's me. I
right,
want people to come from, rough stuff, and
right,
other people who come from luxury, but let's humanize all of this because we're all here. And like you said, again, without being too critical, but being fair to this country, we don't have a centralized system for our health and services the way many other countries do with their ministries of health. So even policies as well as access to resources. But even if you have private insurance and you want to see a therapist, right now there's just an overload. So people can't even see a doctor, even if they can afford it, let
right,
alone those who can't afford it, let alone those who have maybe a culture bias or a language barrier or, some other trepidation about being open and vulnerable with a stranger.
right,
So there's a lot of layers in terms of how far it can go, but the fact that you're being a little honest about it is, listen, my clothing is the door opener. It's the
right,
stopping power. Ooh, what's that? Ooh, love. Ooh, self. And then you kind of wind into the bigger story that you have, and that's why obviously we were put together and
right,
we clicked the first time, and now we're finally doing this interview
right,
because I think it's an excellent embodiment of an easy way to kind of gently go
right,
into some difficult places and have people do this even if they're not ready. Maybe day one of a relationship with you is a hat. And
right,
maybe day 7 is like, "Wait, what's that forum thing they're doing?" And you know what I'm saying,
right. No,
the
I saw
just
exactly what you
saying
said.
that, like, I love the fact that there's dynamicism to it, and that's why also we're looking to do things like events and things together so people can have experiences, not just words, not just, "Here's 5 tips that I think," which aren't bad. People
Right,
ask me all the time, like, "How do you stay healthy?" or "How did," and I'm like, "Okay, well, this is what's worked for me.
right,
Most of the things that I recommend, I've learned or picked up from other leading experts and kind of modified them, or I've done them with workshops with either young people or CEOs, it depends,
right,
but they're all very similar, just how we wrap it. And
right,
I think the more of us that come and say, I want to help with this problem, like you and me and others that were working together, that's how we reach everybody.
for
And
sure.
so thank you, thank you, thank you for like making mental health cool and chic
Yeah,
and and not giving up or losing focus or shift focus, because like you said, I mean, at that point when you had to kind of dissolve a company that you had been commercially successful, had an emotional roller coaster with, had a falling out, whether the fact that you guys can be, that you say it's sort of, agree to disagree kind of thing. There's no animosity, but that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt or feel bad, or you might have both regret and things like that. And then, like you said, go back into entrepreneurship and look at it like, well, when I look at most of the people, Bezos and Gates and whomever, right? You see that their first endeavor wasn't necessarily the one that they're famous for,
right,
and that you got back on the horse. And that's a lesson in and of itself for a lot
right.
of people. So
That's true.
it's only been a year. You were talking about it like it was a long, long time
Oh,
ago,
it's
but
been a year, man.
2023,
It's
it's like, so you did it pretty quickly,
yeah,
and it's opening up legions of new opportunities for you, and hopefully getting a lot of people to look at themselves and their life and how they move through the world a little better.
yes.
So thank you.
Well,
Thank you for joining me today. Thanks for what you're doing, and I can't wait to continue.
oh, we rocking and rolling. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, it's just all about helping and inspiring and being a vehicle for that. And I'm grateful that we are have the opportunity to do so. And thank you for so much for having me here to have this conversation. I think it's always just needed to, push it forward and work together to make these things happen. So grateful for you.
Thanks, Archie, and we'll talk soon. And bye, everybody.
Peace.
At the Natanya Experience, we believe we can all rise above challenges, heal, and shine together. And so we give big thanks to our amazing partners who share our vision of universal health and happiness.